Brigham Young was not just another church president. He led the church longer than any prophet except Joseph Smith, governed an entire U.S. territory, and shaped Mormon doctrine, culture, and authority for generations. During his lifetime, his words were treated as binding guidance. His sermons were recorded, published, and read by saints across the world, which raises a question many members were never encouraged to ask. When Brigham Young was wrong, who corrected him? In 19th century Latter-day Saint culture, prophetic authority was not framed as advisory. Brigham Young taught openly that God led the church through living prophets, and that unity with leadership was essential for survival. Dissent was discouraged, and public criticism of leaders was often equated with spiritual danger. Church records show that obedience was emphasized not as a suggestion, but as a safeguard against chaos, and especially in a frontier society surrounded by threats. Yet Brigham Young taught doctrines that the church no longer accepts. During his presidency, he preached that black members were barred from priesthood and temple ordinances by divine decree. He taught that this restriction would remain until a future time set by God. These teachings were not private opinions. They were enforced institutionally and defended theologically. Today, the church disavows the explanations once used to justify the ban and teaches that it ended by revelation in 1978. But at the time, no correction came. No council publicly challenged Brigham Young. No conference reversed the doctrine. It simply stood until long after his death. This pattern repeats elsewhere. Brigham Young taught with confidence about obedience, authority, and punishment for dissent. He spoke harshly about critics and framed loyalty as a spiritual requirement. Modern church messaging, by contrast, emphasizes compassion, agency, and patience with doubt. The tone has changed. As the teachings have shifted, but during Brigham Young's lifetime, there was no moment of public correction, only later reinterpretation. Church publications today explain this by pointing to continuing revelation. Prophets, they teach, are products of their time. Understanding grows line upon line. Not every past teaching reflects current doctrine. This explanation preserves faith in prophetic leadership while acknowledging historical change. But it leaves an unanswered structural question. If a prophet is only corrected by future prophets and never in his own lifetime, where does accountability exist in real time? Brigham Young was never formally disciplined by the church. He was never publicly rebuked by his peers. He remained the highest authority until his death in 1877. Policies he enforced remained in place for decades. Teachings he preached shaped generations. Correction, when it came quietly through distance, reframing, and omission. This doesn't mean Brigham Young was uniquely flawed. It means he operated within a system where prophetic authority flowed one direction. The structure rewarded certainty, not challenge. In that system, correction was not immediate, it was historical. It happened after consequences had already unfolded. So the question isn't whether Brigham Young was right or wrong. History has already shown that some of his teachings did not endure. The real question is deeper. In a church led by prophets, is accountability meant to be immediate or deferred to the future? And if correction only comes decades later, who protects members living under teachings that will eventually be set aside? For many believers, this realization isn't about losing faith. It's about understanding how authority actually works, not as it's taught in lessons, but as it plays out over time. Brigham Young's legacy forces that conversation because his influence was so complete and because his corrections came only after his voice was gone. History doesn't accuse, it reveals patterns, and one pattern stands out clearly. Brigham Young was never corrected while he lived, only after the church moved on. If prophets are only corrected by future prophets, what does accountability mean in the present? Is authority safeguarded by obedience or by the ability to question it? If you're here for LDS history examined carefully through church records and primary sources, follow for more. And share your perspective below. This question deserves more than silence.